For today's critical thought, we're going to be discussing balancing when it comes to video game skills and options, and how it begins with the idea of a basic kit and then grows and stretches from there. For our purpose today, we're going to be referring to the kit or basic kit as the bare minimum skills, abilities, options, whatever, that every player has access to, regardless of whatever class, character, whatever that they pick. This is basically step zero, the absolute barest of the bare bones. If we're talking about a platformer, run, jump, pick up an item, throw it, that kind of thing. If we're talking about a first-person shooter, run, jump, shoot, all that great stuff. And while this doesn't sound all that interesting right now, you need to understand why having this basic template is important. Because it allows you to then create off branches and different things that can be applied to perks, unique abilities, that kind of thing. As a good example, let's say we're playing a real-time strategy game and we give a character, we give a faction the ability to transform their units, such as have a tank turn into maybe a siege kind of machine, or another faction where you can have a lot of little units that can, I don't know, swarm or rush over the map. It sounds like magic to me. But on a non-jokey example, in Payday 2, every character can pick up loot, they can help people up, run, shoot, throw grenades, that kind of thing. So what they did for the different perk trees is they gave the trees ways of expanding or enhancing these abilities. The mastermind can shout in order to get somebody up, which is very important on one down and death wish difficulty. I think it was the enforcer or another one that allows you to pick up backs and just fling them, which allows you to throw them over fences and move a lot of things with one person that would take the whole team to move slowly. But the point is that by figuring out what the basic elements you want for your game, it will allow you to then come up with creative options. However, balance is always key, and there's a lot to talk about that we probably won't be able to spend, the next hour or two on if we want to in this 20 or so minute video. But when we talk about balancing choices, there's two distinct ways you need to look at things. First, how game-breaking or how much of an improvement this skill or choice is. Is it game-breaking to have this skill? Does it fundamentally change the game for the better or for the worse if you don't have this skill? Here's an example. Let's imagine a competitive FPS, a Call of Duty, a Valorant, Overwatch, anything like that. And let's say that one of the perks you can get is the ability to double jump. And I'll let you guys figure out the in-lore explanation for this. Double jump by itself, it doesn't sound that big of a deal. But let's say you can use double jump to get onto things way up high that no one else can. So that if someone's playing this game, we're talking, super high competitive, one or two shots and you're dead. If I am up here and you always assume when you come out of a blind hallway, I could be either there or there, well, that gives me a huge advantage. Or what if there's environmental details in the place that I can jump on and leap over walls? Suddenly, that corner that you're blocking, I leap up there, I shoot everyone, and I win. It sounds like a really good perk, but therein lies a problem. If something is so good that it would be crazy not to take it, that is not a well-designed choice. You want every choice in your game to have a moment in the sun, or a moment in the spotlight. Does that mean everything should be brokenly overpowered? No. Now another point when it comes to choices and these kinds of off branches is that for a lot of players, they prefer generalized or utility-based skills. Because if you're playing against an unknown team, unknown player, whatever, you want things that can supplement your ability or help you, rather than, throw the dice and hope that the player has something that your skill counters. Here's some examples. The first skill, plus 25% damage if your character is in the shade or at nighttime. Skill number 2. On the second Tuesday of every month between the time of 4:35 and 6:37 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, if you're playing the game and you're up against an opponent whose first name, the letter begins with either X, L, or E, and you ordered a slice of pizza from the in-game pizza matchmaker, you gain plus 10% critical chance. Which skill would you like to use? And no, the second skill doesn't come with pizza. You have to buy the pizza separately in order to proc it. The point is that while that second skill, under the right circumstance, could be really great, the chance of you actually being able to use it is very unlikely. And especially when we're playing a competitive game when you don't know who has what skills and when. And when you're trying to create skills and options like this, it's important to understand, again, what is the basic abilities of your game, and how can you stretch and pull them in different conditions or different directions. But you don't want something to be so good that it becomes standard. Likewise, you don't want something that is so bad or so specific that the conditions for it will never happen. Or if it does happen, it's one of those like 1 in a 5 million chance. And this is also why RNG is a very fickle mistress. One of the big things I remember when I was playing Gwent was when they introduced RNG cards. I play this card, it gives me like either a random effect or it generates a random card in my hand. The problem with these kinds of cards and with RNG in general is that your perception of the value of it is going to be dependent on, well, the dumb luck of what you get. So let's say I play that card and then I get that game-winning, heart of the cards, oh my goodness, it's so fantastic win. I'm going to think this card is far better. If I play it and 10 times in a row I get nothing, I'm not going to think that. And RNG in this respect can be very tricky to balance. If it's guaranteed I get an amazing card, then it's not really RNG. And it's why I have to be really careful. As a tangent, there's going to be several of those in this video, about implementing or introducing RNG with cards, skills, weapons, tactics, anything like that. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about how these issues, when it comes to establishing a basic kit and expanding from there, have really plagued Dead by Daylight, and why their recent 6.5-year mega patch anniversary isn't really helping, I think, some of the long-term issues with the game, and what it could mean going forward. But as always, if you're interested in my thoughts on design, then be sure to check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 Essential Games to Study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with free-to-play coming in 2022. Dead by Daylight is one of those games that I really like the lore and how they expand on the game with new characters, scenarios, and of course the licensed character properties, but it's a game that I find damn near incomprehensible to try and learn as a new player, and also very frustrating to play. Now, very recently, at the time of this recording, Behavior has put out a 6.5-year anniversary super mega patch. It has greatly affected the progression and kind of the ascension kind of reward system. It has touched all the major and game-breaking, or debatably game-breaking perks for both killers and survivors, and it has completely and utterly dropped a nuclear bomb on the game's meta that has been established for so long. But it's also led to people declaring the game is dead, the game is doomed, the game is horrible to play now, and things like that. And from looking at people who've been playing this game for a long time, there's certainly this kind of general assessment that the game has never really been balanced. And again, when we talk about asymmetrical design, you're never going to achieve 100% balance, but from looking at this game and looking at how people have played it, there's definitely some very weird issues that this game has had that I believe have come from Behavior kind of paying themselves into their own design corner. So one of the biggest problem I think this game has from a balancing standpoint, from watching people, watching professional streamers and rage compilations and things like that, is a very simple one. There is no real standard match for Dead by Daylight. And I know what you're thinking right now. Josh, it's a 4v1 asymmetrical game. That's the standard. It's not that simple. There is 4v1, 4 survivors who are all coordinated and talking to each other versus a killer. There's 3 coordinated survivors and 1 random player versus a killer, 2 and 2, and then just 4 random players against 1 killer. And the reason why this matters is that it completely throws what a standard game of Dead by Daylight just out the window. Certain perks and skills greatly benefit from having 4 or even just 2 players coordinating with each other. And when you know exactly what everyone on your team is doing in terms of skills and items, well, we can now coordinate. This one person handles all the generators. This person will just frustrate and mess with the killer. This one will get people off the hook. If you're playing with 4 random people, there's no coordination like that. And to this day, I still am just baffled by Behavior's decision to not render a verdict on whether voice chat should be acceptable or not in the game. And this is a very important point for any developer working on any kind of multiplayer-based game, or even just any kind of game where third-party software can be used. You need to nip it in the bud as early as possible what is acceptable software to be used. And more importantly, if you have people relying on third-party software to add functionality or quality of life to your game, you either need to declare whether or not that is fair or not, or implement it directly into your game, especially if it's voice chat. Do not just sit there, especially trying to build a competitive game, and say, oh, we'll just assume everyone will just use Discord or TeamSpeak or, I don't know, Skype, if there's still gamers using Skype these days. The reason why this is important, again, is that this goes back to establishing a baseline, and more importantly, it's about presenting a fair and balanced environment for everyone playing. Let's say somebody doesn't have Discord. They don't know what the Discord is. And suddenly they're playing against a team or playing with a team that everyone else is on there. They're going to be left out. The team is going to get annoyed with them. And again, it's an unnecessary headache and a kind of a self-inflicted wound that you can put into your game. Now, the reason why this matters is that based on these team compositions and what people are taking, it greatly raises the value or reduces the value of different perks in the game. And this is something, again, that you really don't want to have. You don't want to have perks that are dependent on if people have TeamSpeak or Discord. So I was watching this game from a professional Dead by Daylight player. This was about a year ago. And there was a perk, I think it was called a Spine Chiller or something like that, where if the killer and the survivor anywhere on the map are looking at each other, they can see each other, like on the map, or the survivor gets an alert that the killer is looking at them. So if you're playing this as a solo player or 4 random people, it's a very useful skill for you, but it doesn't really help everyone else. However, if you're playing on a team of 4 people who are coordinating through a TeamSpeak or voice chat service, you can now tell your teammates, hey, I know exactly where the killer is, or I know they're coming for me, you go do something else. And suddenly that one skill just got super buffed in terms of its utility. And you don't want perks to be either going from here to here at the drop of a hat. You want them to have a specific utility, and you want that utility to matter at some point in how you play the game. Again, like I said in the first part, you don't want something that is amazing 100% of the time. If you have, I don't know, rain boots, Yes, rain boots don't help you when it's 97 degrees out in the summertime during the day. But if it's raining and it's pouring really bad and there's lots of puddles, there's that moment in the metaphorical sun. And again, this is why establishing a baseline matters. Because once you've set clear rules for everyone can do this, 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 and this, you can now start to say, okay, how do we add things that change or modify those behaviors in unique ways? How can we then balance that with everything else? If you don't know how your game is going to play, or the basic foundation or routine, that becomes so much harder to balance. Because again, a skill that allows you information works very differently if everyone can't communicate with each other, or if everyone is communicating with each other at a moment's notice. And as I said, if you're trying to build a competitive or a competitively driven game, or a game with some kind of matchmaking or rewards for play or season-based play, you need to set that line in the sand of what is considered your standard experience. The one that you're going to base matchmaking on, rankings, seasons like that. You can, of course, have, free modes or, unranked or public games where anything goes. But this is why for a lot of competitively driven games, they will set these rules very hard. They will say, okay, if you want to play the free match or, an unranked match, use whatever the heck you want. But if you want to be ranked, if you want to be, considered one of the top players, you must abide by these rules. And developers, again, it's something I don't think they like to do, is set these hard rules for how you have to play the game. But like we've said, gamers are incredibly good at breaking down mechanics in a title to figure out what is the best options. And the second a player finds that, they are going to tell everyone. And then people are going to make YouTube videos and Twitch streams, and then suddenly your meta is now in trouble. And as we've said many times over, a solidified meta, no pun intended, we're talking about Dead by Daylight, is the nail in the coffin for competitive games. Because your game will then turn into everyone's using the meta, everyone's using the counter meta. And all of a sudden, all those different skills and characters and items that you've meticulously created, probably 70 to 80% of them are now completely useless. Because if they're not for the meta or against the meta, why should you take them? And I want to end this on one final point. Going back to that Dead by Daylight example I said with the player running to the information. That killer did win at the end of the game. They managed to beat that, they crushed it, they overcame it. Some people will argue, well, if you just get good, then, who cares if something is overpowered or if I get an unfair advantage? But you see, again, if you are trying to build a live service game, a long-term live service game, you need to make your game as inviting to new players as it is to your hardcore and your core audience. If you don't have new players coming in, then you are having to rely 100% that none of your expert players ever leave the game, because you're not going to have new people coming in. And once word gets out that your game is annoying to play or it's horrible for the new player, people aren't going to come. And then you are in that death spiral. And for a lot of games, they do not get out of that spiral. It just keeps spiraling down, as the name suggests. And again, as another tangent to this video, this is why onboarding in UI UX matters. And if you change any of your basic rules, mechanics, systems, as your game is through a live service, you need to update your onboarding. And I don't just mean change a text file with one line. I mean, if you have an in-game tutorial, you have to update that. and you should update your in-game tutorial as new systems and mechanics are introduced. Because you don't want people to be introduced to some crazy new system or rule in the middle of a match when they have no idea that it even exists. And I could certainly rant and rave about that with Dead by Daylight for a few more minutes, but we'll leave it at that for now. So, to wrap things up or summarize, try to figure out what you want your baseline experience to be in your game. And again, the baseline is universal across all characters, factions, perks, aliens, different animals, whatever. Because once you've done that, you can then start, again, pushing into different directions. You can give someone a unique advantage over here, someone can get a unique advantage over there. It's all about creating these branches or offshoots off that basic experience. And again, you want your choices to matter. No choice should be fantastic 100% of the time. But you want that time when that skill to matter to really matter. You want it to be the star of the show if it's in its right moment. You do not want to introduce a skill, again, that is just focused entirely on such a subset of a chance that's happening. And if something becomes so critical, so crucial, that again, it would be considered, a pariah not to use a skill or perk, then you should consider making that as part of your baseline kit, especially if your game is built on choices. If you only let the player to choose 3 perks, and 1 perk is considered to be God tier, well, now you only have 2 choices. And you can also, when you make something baseline, you can adjust it however you see fit to accommodate for that. One of the things that Dead by Daylight did was they made, I believe the perk is called Borrow Time, which allows you to take a free hit when you get off a hook. That is now baseline in a smaller capacity. And again, this is how you can start to look at balancing your game. What can the player use, no matter what they have as perks or customization? And is there a way to tweak that base kit? And if you tweak the base kit, just like if you tweak your core gameplay loop, it affects all systems and options that are attached to it. And again, that's also why it's important to establish both and lock them down as early as possible. But with that said, thank you so much for watching the video. Do all the liking, subscribing, and commenting. Check out the Discord and Patreon. Let me know if you have any more ideas for future videos. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where I examine the art and science of games.